All right. Welcome back. It's been a while since I've been live and creating content in general. I'm trying to get back in the groove, but thanks for coming through. If you're watching anytime you watch it, but this is Miguel Sanchez World. Today I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship, man. I'm building a company. It's been about a year and a half now, but I think a lot of people are about to become entrepreneurs with the economy going the way it's going and AI going where it's going. And I just want to start talking through some of the things I've thought through as I've been an entrepreneur for over 15 years at this point, full time. So, a lot of lessons that you hopefully don't have to learn like I had to learn them. So, I want to start out by talking about business in general, your ideas, right? Like I think what happens to a lot of us, especially in the beginning, is we think our idea is great and we want to create something that we want to the world to have, right? So when I first got into business, I created an agency called Mass Ideation, which is still exists. I still got projects going through that company, but I created the idea of mass ideation means like make ideas for a lot of people, right? And when I did that, I thought this company would go and create big ideas, and what it became was an agency's production company. Right? So like the idea of big ideas, they're cool if you're going to take all the risk in doing them. So when I first started mass ideation, I didn't understand that, right? I said, okay, I'm going to make a company that makes big ideas. And then when reality hit and I sat in front of my computer, I'm like, all right, so what are the big ideas I'm going to make? I need to make money. So I'll just go back to what I already know. And that was the agency world, right? I was already in the agency world for like 7 years or something like that. I was building projects, building websites, animations for big agencies. So I just went back to those people, and I actually the way I started mass ideation was I got a big mobile app project where I just needed to build a mobile app, and I did it myself, and I made like $30,000 myself. So I said, all right, this is my seed stage funding for this website, for this business. So what I did was I said, okay, I got months of my salary. Back then I have no kids, so it was very low expenses. So that's one lesson. First lesson: keep your expenses low if you're going to start a business, because I know people think, you start a business, private jets are coming the next month, but that's not how it works. So, first thing is figure out how to lower your expenses if you're going to be in business. And I think that in general, you should learn how to lower your expenses, because I think overall, over time, the more you can put into investing, whether it's in your business or investments, the better. So the higher your expenses are every month, the less you're going to be able to put into investments. So that was the thing I wish I understood earlier, because early, before I had kids and I had my first business, I was doing well, but I wasn't investing at all. I was either putting it back in the business or going and traveling and stuff like that, which was fun. But looking back and looking at all that money that was made back in those days and not having it now, I look and I'm like, wow, that was a lot of money that just went through my hands, right? And that's part of where I came up with this new idea. But so the way my journey started was I was a freelancer for many years. I had one full-time job, and then I became a freelancer, and I basically went from company to company, being like a hired gun to make projects. And then I got to a point where I was like, you know what? People were offering me more projects than I could do by myself. So I was working more than 24 hours a day. So I had to get other people to help me. And that was when I needed to learn business. But I didn't go to school for business. I didn't, even set out to be an entrepreneur like that. I just wanted to control my own time. And that's another big thing. I think entrepreneurship is that, figuring out a way to make enough where you get to choose what you do with your time. I think if you come into it thinking like that, you'll have a better go at it, because I think a lot of people come into it thinking, how can I make $1 million a year as fast as possible? And most businesses are just not going to do that, basically, right? So like if you're going at it like that and then you don't reach that, you feel like you're a failure, but you're not. If you could get to the point where your expenses cover your life and you can live the life you want, even if that's 100,000 a year, that's good. You win at life. Most people hate their job. You don't want to be one of those people, right? So at the end of the day, I say come at entrepreneurship in a way that you start to think, okay, what is the life expenses I want to be able to, how much do I want to live off of? How can I make a business that makes me that much? Yeah, you might still have a job. And I'll be honest, I didn't come at it like that, but I think most people have to, right? Like you have to look at your current situation and say, okay, how can I replace my job with my side hustle or whatever it is, right? So if you're making X amount to pay your bills, then how can this new business come up give you that? So another big mistake I think I made early was I went into a business that was not it was hard to scale because it's based on people, right? So with agencies, which was what I had, right? People come to me and say, "Hey, Miguel, we want this website, we want this cool app, we want let's daunting way, Alan, what's up, man? Um, we want this app, we want this website, we want this, that." So I would say, because I was able to do the work myself back then, I would say, okay, how much is this going to take me in time? Then I will put a dollar amount, and then I would try to do it myself, all of it. And if I could do it all myself, I would keep all the money. But as I got more and more work, I realized I can't do it all. Like I was literally gonna die. I was doing more than 24 hours of work a day. Like I was accepting more than 24 hours a day of work. So what that means was to scale, I needed more people. So then I had to call all my friends that knew what knew me, worked with me, but I knew were good. And if they were available, they could help. And now I can accept more and more jobs. But it took people to scale. And if I wanted to create like $100 million business, I would need thousands and thousands of people. So it wasn't easy. And I didn't enjoy it. Once I got mass ideation up to like 30 people at one point, not full time, but like different people working on different projects. And it was a nightmare. And I was like, you know what? I didn't get into business for this. I don't want to do this. Even though it was making money, I just didn't enjoy it. So again, I came at entrepreneurship not to make $1 million a year, but to enjoy doing things I like and covering my costs. So the agency business is a quick business to turn into okay money, but it's a hard business to scale. And once I realized that, I started saying, okay, this is not the business type that I want to like retire from. And I remember going to a conference. Actually, somebody had me speak at a conference. And because I was a speaker, I got to go into a room with this very high paid consultant. And he said something that I wish I heard when I was starting my business early. He said, start the business and run it like you're going to have to run it to the day you die. And that was like a punch to the face. When I heard it, I was like, that's interesting. Because right now, mass ideation isn't that. At that point, I already had created the nonprofit Meta Bronx, which was a little bit more of that. Like it was helping people, which we were helping we still work. We're helping entrepreneurs raise funds, right, for their ideas. So what Meta Bronx does is it accelerates startups. Like a company will come in that has a big idea and needs funding. We will help them understand the way they do that. But at the same time, we bring young people from down communities like the Bronx, where I come from, and they get to see how we help these startup founders. So if they're young and they're learning this early, our hope is when they have a big idea, they'll be like, oh, I remember when this person did that. This is what they did. So we already created that. And I remember thinking mass ideation, I can run mass ideation as long as I want because it's basically me and my friends, right? Whenever I get a project, I call my friends and say, hey, you want to work on this? And we do it. Meta Bronx was a little bit harder because it was based on startups coming in. We having like a set time working with them, and then we talk to them for the rest of their lives, right? So it's more of an ongoing nonprofit, it's more like a give back than like a business that's gonna pay my expenses for the rest of my life. And we knew that creating it, so that was fine. So I said, okay, what's the next thing I want to create? And then I started looking at the startups we were helping, and I'm like, wait, I could do that. So I started a startup. The first startup I started was based on, again, an idea that I thought people would want, and I thought it could be big. So how I found that was, I used to do this thing called augmented reality. Some people may know about it. It's like it's a technology that it's like AI vision. That's how it was brought up to me, and how I really got into it. It was basically working on AI, but with vision, with forgot how they call it now, but computer vision. That's literally what they call it. So I started there, and I created my business card, where if you held up your phone to my business card, the business card would like do some 3D animation thing, and it was very cool. So I just did it as a demo that I would show clients. But what I started to realize was that the clients would keep my business card on their table. So like I would come to the client every like few weeks to show them different things, to see what kind of projects we could get. And I would realize that the business card was on their table. So I was like, maybe people would want this. Maybe businesses would want that, right? Because that's a good thing to have, where your business card is literally on your client's table because it's so cool. But I didn't really talk to business owners. I just said, I think people are going to want this. And I went into ridiculous debt to make it happen. I basically maxed out my credit cards, my business credit card, my personal credit card, to make it happen. But I never spoke to entrepreneurs first. And I never like asked people if they were going to want to do this. I built the app, and then I started talking to people and saying, hey, look, I got this cool thing. Don't you want it? And people were like, no, I'm good. And that was a major lesson, right? Like, get a validation of your idea before you spend money making it. That was a huge lesson. Of course, I went into debt, and I never paid that credit card back, and I had to like let it go. And it's been past 7 years, so it's off my credit. But when I did that, I went into like $30,000 in debt on an idea that I didn't even talk to the customer of before starting. So that's a huge lesson. Allison, you were there. That's a huge lesson. Like, if you have an idea, now I tell people, and people we accelerate and all that, how many customers have you spoken to so far? If you can't say you spoke to customers and they said, that's very interesting, and I am willing to be a tester, because again, people will tell you, yeah, I'll pay for that. But then when it's made, they're like, oh, it's a little tough right now. I don't have the money. So you can actually, nobody wants to hurt your feelings. There's a really good book that I recently found called The Mom Test. So the way the mom test works is, you ask people questions. You don't tell them that you have an idea. You don't tell them you have a business you're running or whatever it is. You ask them questions around the mom test. The reason the book is called The Mom Test is because your your idea is the greatest, right? But they'll never, but regular people are going to want to be nice to you. They're not going to be like, yeah, that's a dumb idea, Miguel. Don't do that. They're going to be like, oh yeah, that's cool. Most people are going to do that. But if you ask questions first about whatever the problem you're solving, which is another idea I learned very late, and that's what I'm doing now. Let's say, for instance, I'll tell you what I do right now with Stack, right? I know most people are not investing enough to retire, and everybody wants to retire, but like 99.999% of people have no idea what it's going to take for them from right now to retirement to get the number they want. So I don't ask that. I ask, hey, what are you doing right now for retirement? Not enough. Oh yeah, but what is it? Oh, I'm investing my 401k a little bit, but it's not gonna get there. I don't think. And I'm like, all right, so what's the number you think you need to get to retire? I don't even know. All right, but like, if you had to guess right now, how much a year do you want to live off of? I would say like 150. All right, so how are you gonna get there? I have no clue. Right there, they're giving me problems that I could be solving for them, right? Instead of me saying, hey, I got this app, Stack, where you can invest as much as you make, and then you can get to your retirement faster, right? If I start like that, people come and they're like, oh, I don't know, this is finance stuff. I don't really know enough. But if I'm asking questions around the problem and they're giving me the solutions, so one thing we started to do is on our calls, we would say, all right, so you're not investing enough for retirement, but how much are you spending in bills every month? Yeah, it's tough right now. I'm spending, and I'm putting this on the credit card. And then it's like, okay, but what if you could be investing half of that? Oh my God, that would be amazing. I wish. Bam. Gotcha. You could. Let me show you how with Stack you could. And now it's like, holy shit. Shut up and take my money, right? Versus what I did with the company was called Vibrance. I made the product, didn't really have a problem it was solving. It was just like a cool factor. They say business ideas are painkillers or vitamins. You want to create a painkiller, right? So basically the pain that I'm trying to kill now is you're not saving enough for retirement and you might have to work to the day you die. Not much more pain than that. So you want to make sure, here, I have the painkiller for you, right? Where Vibrance was a vitamin, right? Like you don't know you need it. You kind of think you need it. So you want to take it. So I basically was able to sell maybe 3 people on Vibrance, but it was very hard versus Stack. We're at hundreds of customers now because it's very easy. Once you know you have the problem and there's a solution, the pill, it's easier to sell that, right? So what another big thing I tell people is figure out a problem to solve. And I think this is actually one of the biggest skill sets with AI coming along. Figure out how to identify problems that people have and then figure out how to mom test as many people around that problem. And they will give you the business idea that you could create. And again, a lot of times it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be, but again, you don't want to do what I did, build the whole thing and then find that out when nobody's buying it, right? So this is one of the major lessons. Like, and the other day I was telling my partner at Meta Bronx about the fact that Stack was my first startup, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "You've done many startups," and I said, "Oh, you know what? You're right. I just don't even consider those startups because I was never really dealing with customers, right? Now I got to deal with hundreds of customers. So now it feels like this is my first startup." So one of the big things that I learned in this one was I didn't build Stack until I validated that people would pay. And how did I do that? This was like a hack that I learned on YouTube. That's another thing. Just watch YouTube, ask questions on YouTube and watch videos. What I did was I knew I was going to automate a process, but I knew people could do the process by hand, but I knew they wouldn't want to do it. But I knew I could teach some people how to do it. So what I did was I set up a class. First, I gave the class for free. I had people come. Nobody showed up. People came, but nobody did it. A few people, like I had like 50 signups. Nobody, like 5 people came. Nobody did it. So then I charged $100 for the class. Like 30 people showed up and like 1 person did it. So then I was like, okay, people paid though. People paid for the class. So that told me that they wanted the thing. They just didn't want to do it. Which guess what I was going to do? I was going to do it for them using AI, right? So that was where I validated, because at that point I had a bunch of people tell me, and then I was coaching at the same time. I was coaching high net worth individuals to do it. So I had people paying me $5,000 a year for me to walk them through how to do it. So that was another validation point where if a person pays $5,000 to do something, then somebody will pay a lot less to do the same thing for you, right? So like them $5,000 payment, those people, they were learning how to do it themselves and they would have full control versus an app that would do everything for them for a lot less. So again, I got like multiple levels of validation before I started spending money building this time, right? And I think what I would tell new entrepreneurs when you right now, if you're thinking about what am I going to do, what's the new business I want to create, figure out how to validate the problem you're solving But the way to do that first is by talking to people with the mom test. Read that book. Mom test is called, I think. Yeah, pretty sure. And start figuring out the problem you're solving, but then validate with money. Try to figure out how to validate with money, because like I said, people will tell you all day, yeah, man, I'll support. I'm definitely gonna do it. But again, once it's there, not as many people do it. So you got to know that. You just got to know that going in. And as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest things you got to understand is not everybody's your customer, right? Your mom is not your customer. Your best friend from high school's probably not your customer. So you can't really expect your friends to be your customers or your family to be your customers. If you think that's what's going to happen, you're going to go out of business really fast. You have to figure out how to find the people. They call it to have the hair on fire problem, right? So again, you're talking about figuring out a problem to solve. Now you got to find people that have that problem. So one way to do that is what I'm doing right now, creating content. And a few years ago, I was creating a lot more content, but I didn't even really know what I was building. I was just creating content just to learn how to do it. And to be honest, by creating the content, people started asking me for problems, for solutions to their problems. So that's kind of how I got to Stack, right? Like I started finding decentralized finance opportunities, and I would post I will post videos about it. And then people will come back like, yeah, but I don't want to do this. I would love to do it, but I don't want to be the one to do it. Can I pay you to do it? So that's when I was like, that means I got to go get all kind of licenses. I don't really want to do that. But then I realized, wait a minute, I could have them pay me to coach them, but they'll do it while I'm on video teaching them how to do it. They're the ones doing it. So I don't need any license for that, because I'm just telling you what I do. And if you want to do it, you do it. So I did that. Then I realized with AI, I can make it automation. So another big problem I see most business owners now that are starting out make is they're creating sales-based businesses. What that means is it's not recurring revenue. So like, let's say I'm going to make cake, like cupcakes, make a cupcake business. I got to sell new cupcakes every day. And yes, some people may come back for cupcakes every few months, maybe. But I'm not getting somebody to pay for cupcakes every month, right? So the same thing with a book, with t-shirts, with certain, there's businesses that don't have reoccurring revenue. I think if you're starting a business, you want to figure out a business that can have reoccurring revenue, because what happens is you put a lot of time and a lot of work into finding customers. But if that customer only buys once from you, you got to put in all that time again to find another one. But if you put in a lot of time and that person keeps buying from you in whatever business sense you created, that's better use of your time, right? If you spend 100 hours to get a customer and that customer buys once from you, but if you spend 100 hours and that customer buys every month from you for 2 years, better, right? So again, I know that's hard, and that's where software businesses are best, right? Because they're monthly recurring, because they do something people need every month. I would recommend you fight to find that, because even gyms, think about gym is not software, and a gym is every month, right? So if you're going to have a gym membership, they're going to charge your card every month. You're going to show up or you're not, and they're still charging your card, right? So there's other ways of creating recurring revenue businesses. I think as an entrepreneur, you got to challenge yourself and figure that out, or you're going to have a lot more struggle, because you got to constantly bring in new people. I was watching this thing about Disney, actually, and Disney said every day people who knew him or whatever, they said every day he would wake up and say, where are my customers coming from today? And what he would tell his people is, I want, if a person is standing in someone's house, any way they look, I want them to see Disney. If they're looking in the kitchen, I want them to see a Disney cup, a Disney plate. If they look in the living room, I want them to see a Disney product on TV, whether that's ESPN, Mickey Mouse, whatever, right? They own a bunch of things, Channel 7, all that, right? ESPN, right? All those things are Disney products. So if you're looking in the living room, you see a Disney product. Look in the bedroom, maybe a pillow, whatever. But he thought like that, and that was pretty interesting to me because I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy. But if you think about it, he pulled it off, right? Like he pulled it off. But you can't even do it if you don't think about it, right? So what I would tell you is think about a business that's recurring, but also is part of people's lives. So when I was thinking about Stack, right, I first thought about the idea of using decentralized finance, but then I said, all right, how can I make it part of people's lives? And I was like, holy shit. And it happened to me. I was doing the idea myself whenever I got extra money. But then I needed to buy a cell phone, and I realized I could do this with my cell phone. I need to buy a cell phone. Why not stack the cell phone and invest the same amount as the cell phone? And that's when it was like, holy shit, you could do this with every single bill. Every time you spend money, you can invest how much you spend money. So that was where it was like, oh my God, this is a huge idea. If I could get people to understand it's possible, which is hard, and I'm still working on that. But again, I really, in my past ideas, I wasn't even thinking about stuff like that, right? Like mass ideation was make big ideas. Hopefully, I don't even know how, but make big ideas. Then when I made Vibrance, which was that augmented reality business card, I was like, I made an idea because I used to see my business card on people's tables, and I was like, oh, other people would want that. So I'm going to make a business. So then I created another startup called The Rise because I had thought this social media stuff, right? You get a lot of views, but most of these influencers don't make a lot of money. So I started to say, what if I could create another way that they can make money off their views? So again, I went into debt, started paying for a service where we could stream people's content on websites. And I started reaching out to influencers and saying, hey, what if I stream your content and we'll share the revenue? I forgot the rev split. But again, didn't do enough upfront research. What I realized after doing all of that is people don't leave these platforms. These platforms are built so people do not leave them. So if you have a video playing on a website, let's say that same video is on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, Twitter. Because there's so much people on Twitter, it's going to get a lot more views. If you put it on your website, you got to convince somebody to leave the social media platform and go to your website. And that is very hard, even with the top people that have so many followers. I still couldn't make it happen. So again, I went into debt trying to do something that didn't work. So what I would tell you is, again, before you actually start spending money, start figuring out how to validate your ideas, get people to pay something for the problem you're solving. And while you're doing that, you're learning what to build. And again, I'm talking mostly software because software is super scalable. Like right now, 1 million people could get on my app tomorrow. Again, that's not likely to happen, but it's possible. Versus if I sold cupcakes, 1 million people are not walking into my store, right? So with me, like I think one of the biggest ups and downs is, also understanding the market you go into. Like when I created mass ideation, what I understood was that the times of the year where there was a lot of work and the times of year when there wasn't a lot of work, because I was a freelancer for many years in that industry. So what I would do is I would go heavy on sales during like certain points of the year, like Christmas, right before summer was a big time too. There were certain points of the year where a lot of work was out there and you could go get it. Then there were certain points of the year where it was harder to get work. So I would base the business on that. What I'm learning now is there's always a time people are going to buy. You just got to find the people that need your problem. If you create a problem, solve a painkiller instead of a vitamin, there's always people with that problem. So if you figure out how to get to those people with the problem and then they can buy from you, then you always have business, right? So right now, that's one of the things I'm seeing now with Stack, right? Like to actually retire on time, this is crazy. Like another thing, I hope everybody understands they're getting their retirement stuff in order. They say in order to retire on time, by the time you're 30, you need 1 year's salary. Okay, so that means if you make 100, 120, 150, you need 150K, 80, 70, whatever you make, you need that in a retirement, not in your bank account, savings, in a retirement account. By 40, you need 3 times. So if you're 40 and you make 150, you need 450 in your retirement fund, not in your bank account. When you retire, you need 10 times your salary in a retirement fund to retire comfortably. I think I've come across, I've had hundreds of calls for Stack. I think I've come across one person, maybe two that's on pace. But again, it might be because I'm solving that hair on fire problem. So people are coming because they know they have that problem. But I even talk to people who I believe are pretty well off. Most people are not retiring on time. So again, I also know it takes a consistent investing over years to reach retirement. So I combine the problem. You pay. So one of the things I always tell people is, yeah, you don't want to invest for 30 years, but you're going to pay bills for 30 years. I was even thinking about this the other day. I've been paying Netflix for over 15 years in a row. I've been paying my cell phone bill. I've had the same cell phone number since I'm like 19 years old. That's recurring revenue right there, right? So, but again, think about that. Let's take a compound interest calculator based on that number alone. Let's say my cell phone bill has been $100 a month I'm 25 years old, so for like 25 years. Okay, compound. I can't show it because we're live on Instagram and stuff, but I'm gonna tell you the number. $100 a month, 25 years, and let's say we got a yearly gain of just 10%. I will have $118,000 from just paying a cell phone bill, right? And that's 25 years. That's 10%. That's one bill though, and that's where I've been trying to figure out the problem and solve it. But okay, let's go back to entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship's ups and downs. Another big thing I didn't learn the best way is to be ready for feast and famine, right? So like when I first started Mass Ideation, the first year I did amazing, like ridiculous. Like I said, I had a bunch of people working, but what I didn't understand was the net 30s and net 60s, net 90s. If you don't know what that means, because the business I went into, you deal with agencies and brands, big companies, and they don't pay you right away. So you could do a job that's like $100,000 job, and you're not going to get the money for 90 days after you finish the job sometimes. So that means you are essentially the bank, right? So let's say that happened, and it has happened to me. Company came, they said, all right, Miguel, we want you to do this $100,000 job. Okay, go do it. And it's going to take 2 months, and you're going to get paid 90 days after that. So what does that mean? 5 months, you're not going to get that 100,000, but you got to pay everybody for those 5 months, right? So I didn't fully understand that going in because I always got paid. I was a freelancer. I'll do the job. They pay me. But what I didn't understand is as you get bigger and bigger jobs, it's not how it works, right? So that year was 2009. I started Mass Ideation. The day my kids were born, I was owed. I don't even remember the number anymore, but I think it was multiple 6 figures. 6 figures. And I'm watching my kids my kids be born like, I'm screwed. I don't even know what I'm going to do. How am I going to get? I'm going to do this, right? So one of the big things I would tell you is understand the business you're going to be in. Try to research it as much as possible. Maybe even work in it for a little while, because even me working in it, I didn't know that's how it worked, which is crazy. But again, you don't know what you don't know, right? So again, that became this thing that I had to really figure out, because as that money, that amount that I was waiting to get was getting higher and higher, and I'm trying to figure out how to pay everybody, I was not paying myself. And I could do that before I had kids, right? Because my expenses were very low. But then when I had kids, it was like, uh-oh, how's that going to work? And again, it's just lack of understanding. I could have asked people. I didn't know. Again, you don't know what you don't know. So I would tell you, as an entrepreneur, try to figure out how to make friends with people who are in the industry and ask them, because that's a big thing. I would tell you, entrepreneurs are very okay with telling you their battle scars and telling you where the landmines are. And I didn't do that. I don't know why, but now I do. So now, for instance, with Stack, I literally talk to finance people all the time. Hey, okay, so here's what I'm doing. Do you see anything wrong with this? Have you ever seen something like this? Do you see any problems with it? And again, entrepreneurs, we're very cool with, oh man, because we love talking about entrepreneurship, man. Like we're going to help other entrepreneurs to not happen what happened to us. So I would tell you, join like LinkedIn groups, find people on Twitter in your same industry that you're going into, and just be a fly on the wall. And if you get cool with them, ask. Because what I like to ask is, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you? So that I can know those those very bad things, so they don't happen to me. So with the finance, oh my God, right? Well, I won't even go into them, but I had enough conversations to go for it. Another lesson: overthinking kills most ideas. So I've had so many good ideas, very good ideas, and I've overthought it and just didn't do it. And now I look up and a lot of those ideas are made, and I'm like, wow, I could have did that. I literally thought of that idea, and I did. Like, there's multiple ones that I've got to, like, right up to the race line, and I said, no, I'm not doing it. But I did other dumb things. So what I would tell you is, what I was able to get done with Stack was, I said, look, I'm not gonna let the fear of finance industry stop me, right? Which a lot of people would, right? Like, it's an industry where people go to jail for doing something that they just didn't know was illegal, right? So when I went into that, that was stopping me. And I said, you know what? I'm not gonna let it stop me. So I went for it, and a lot of people thought I was crazy. Many people, my mentors, were like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Mostly because crypto doesn't have any laws yet, right? So I'm like, I think most people in history have made money by going into industries that weren't set early and taking the risk, and I'm willing to do it. But again, not for everybody. So what I would tell you, that the thing to do there is figure out your risk tolerance, but try not to overthink, because I've seen so many entrepreneurs that just talk themselves out of ideas of doing things that they would have done pretty well, but they just don't do it because they're just like over analyzing. It's like what they call it, analysis paralysis. And this time with this business, as I said, it's been almost a year and a half or more at this point. I went into it and I said, all right, I've already validated it. I know crypto, there's no laws, but I'm not doing anything I studied what puts people in jail. And I said, okay, I'm not doing any of that. I'm not doing fraudulent things. And what the beauty of crypto is, you don't hold people's money. That's one of the biggest things about finance. And I understood that. That's why people go to jail. They'll manage people's money. They take people's money, and you don't have the proper licenses, and you also take their money and do bad things like FTX, and many people in history through finance have done it. Bernie Madoff, right? Bernie Madoff took people's money saying he was an investor and never invested it, and just like gave people their money back, and people thought, he was making so much money, so they gave him more money. So research enough to feel comfortable, but don't overthink. And I know that's hard. It's really hard. But like even right now, today I'm going online. I almost didn't come online today because I was overthinking. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to do the live, whatever. Just go for it. And I think you gotta just you gotta play dumb. Like no, you are like a person that overthinks, because to be an entrepreneur, you have to think about things, but you can't make it stop you. And you have to figure out how to balance that. Like, and I just think it's so key, because a lot of this is crazy. Like, if you think about it, like most entrepreneurs, most people are looking at us like we're crazy. It's not safe, right? Why don't you just go get a job? I've had many people tell me, you got so much skills, just go get a job. And I'm like, I'd rather die. And that's another thing, right? Like, understand how hard it is. Like, and I think a lot of times the best thing to do to know that is to join an entrepreneur and see what they have to go through, and figure out if it's something you want to go through, or you just want to be like a second, third, fourth in command, and you're willing to help, but you don't want to take on the lion's share of the risk. And I've been an entrepreneur long enough where I'm not scared of the risk, right? The risk is the risk. And to me, there's a bigger risk in not enjoying working for somebody else. I just can't imagine working 30 years of my life and hating my life because I hate my job, right? That's, to me, a bigger risk. So that's another big thing I would tell you. And another big thing I wish I did better. This is the last one. I'll end with this. Is I wish I did better about, they say pay yourself first. And of course you pay yourself as an entrepreneur. But I wasn't thinking about what I'm talking about this like end goal of one day I don't want to work anymore. How do I get there? Literally millions of dollars have went through my business hands to people, just through my bank account to people. And yes, I would stay with a percentage of it, and I was able to live a life, pay my bills, have kids. But now I know there's a way to keep the money that goes through the business. So it not only goes through the business and is working towards that retirement goal or business goal, but it's also paying the bill. And that is a huge, huge thing. Huge thing. Like, again, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't understand what I'm talking about, DM me, whatever. But there's a way to keep the money you're making and still spend it. That's why we say use your money twice. And that is an unlock for entrepreneurs, because if you're an entrepreneur, you know it. A lot of money goes through your hands. And if you could keep it and still spend it, you can get there faster. So if you've been here this long, thank you so much for watching or listening whenever you did that. Go to stackit.ai/MSW. Join the waitlist if you're interested in learning more about that idea. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to go into it right now, which I think a lot of you are going to have to. First things first, understand it's going to be hard. It's going to take longer than you think. Be willing to do that. Understand that whatever time you think it's going to take, it's probably going to take double, triple, but go into it knowing that. So you say, hey, I think it's going to take me 6 months to make money. It's going to take you 18 months to make money. Are you okay with that? No, I'm not. All right. So how can you shift your world to wait 18 months to get paid? Hopefully it happens faster. But if I found that if I put that out there like that, and I'm okay waiting 18 months, I'm in a better position. And that's how I got where I got to with Stack. I didn't get a external customer for a few months. Again, talking to people. I was doing it myself. My family, my friends, my co-founders, we were doing it because we knew it worked. But convincing other people, that takes time, right? So it took some time, and then they convinced other people. And now we got a lot of customers, but it took a while. And it really ramped up this year. Like last year, barely had any. This year's like exponential, but it took time. If it was 3 months in and I'm like, oh, this is not working, who knows, right? But again, tell yourself 10 years. 10 years is the number, they say. I remember, and I'll end here. The first time I made the first website as my own company, I went into an entrepreneur's office. He was Hispanic, so he was cool, trying to tell me, the ins and the outs. And he said, I didn't even know what I was doing for the first 10 years of business. And this guy had a multi, probably $100 million business, real estate business. He was like at the top of some big building. I was like shocked of all his employees. And for him to say, I didn't even know what I was doing for the first 10 years. He said, you're not going to know what you're doing for the first 10 years. And that was a good thing to hear, because I didn't know what I was doing. He knew it. So I'm telling it to you. You're not going to know what you're doing for the first 10 years, but also try to build a business that you're willing to work for the rest of your life. Because if you could do that, you can't lose. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Now, thank you for watching, listening, wherever you've done it. And I'll keep doing these. Again, join the Stack It waitlist, stackit.ai/MSW.